Hi, I'm Representative Marcia Hahn at the 102nd Farm Show in Harrisburg. With me is Secretary Russell Redding.
It's great to see you.
Good
Happy
afternoon.
New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for joining me today.
It's good to be here.
So, I'm from Northampton County, and I know you've been out to my district for many occasions. I think you were just out at the Plainfield Farmers Fair this past summer.
Ah, yes.
We love our Farmers Fair. You know, and I think one of the things that I'm always impressed with, especially at the fairs, are the young people that are involved in ag, and you know, to keep them interested. And then we get to see them out here again. I walked around, I saw a lot of the constituents who were out here. So, can you tell me how we're going to keep the youth engaged and keep agriculture going here in Pennsylvania?
Well, I appreciate your support of the fairs and recognition of that. We can do a lot of things that you and I like, but it's about all of those folks who are, you know, teenagers and you know, in that age where I want them to also like the fairs and our rural communities. But that's not going to happen just because you and I hope it does. You're going to be very intentional. I look at the farm show as one of those opportunities. You look around here and the number of young families that are coming through. Where else do they get a chance to really touch ag, right, and be part of that? You can do that here. You can inspire them to, you know, maybe on the workforce side, but at least appreciate a little more of what agriculture looks like in your county and around the state. Excuse me. But you also have to then look at, in a teaching way, what we do within our K-12 system and what we do with the ag education curriculum, and you've been, you know, a leader on that, and part of those conversations are really doing it. So it's a lot of different things, but it's being very intentional, I think, to make sure that people connect, you know, the food system with the quality of life in this Commonwealth.
And know where the food's coming from, not just from the grocery store.
Yeah, that you know, the green beans are in aisle 5. Right, I mean, that's fine, but what happened in the community, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in our area especially, and maybe around the state, you see a lot more of the farmers markets. So the local farmers are getting to bring their produce to the people.
Yeah.
And they seem to be taking off with that. People are enjoying coming out and meeting the people who are producing the food for them. So I think that's good. Do you see that across the state? We
see it growing, and both it's driven by sort of the consumer's interest in it and the farmer's need for it. Right, because there's a lot of farms that need to, you know, find another market. They're good marketers, they're great producers, finding a way to take that product right to the street. So those farmers markets are really critical.
They're good, and we enjoy them in the area. So one thing in Northampton County, I'm going to switch gears to Farmland Preservation.
Yes.
So every year I have a farmers event, and that's always a big topic that comes up. I know you were out, I think it was 2 years ago.
I've had that question a couple times, right?
And you have, and Doug Wolfgang from your staff was out last year to talk about farmland preservation. So I think Northampton County has about 15,000 acres preserved.
Yeah.
How is that program going across the state?
It's been good, and first of all, thanks to you and the county leaders with the program. You know, I think it's a great story of Pennsylvania, because 25 years ago, we were so bold to ask the general public, would you support a farmland preservation program as a ballot question, right? And I think that's a really distinguishing piece for us versus some other states. And it set a tone in Pennsylvania about the value of that and the connectedness between, you know, our farms and the importance of the land and folks who you know, in the local communities. It's going well. We have a couple of milestones. We're at 550,000 acres in Pennsylvania, 5,200 farms. We'll honor them here at Farm Show, some of the Century Bicentennial and Preserve Farms. It's going well. I think for you and I is really looking at how do you maintain those farms, because the deed restrictions say that they will remain an active agricultural enterprise forever. And that's no small task. So I think as we look at this issue from a policy standpoint, I'm very interested in it as a resource center. But it begins with the families who say yes. And I'm very proud of every one of them who's done that.
No, and that's great, and you know, I think it's good to keep those family-owned farms for generations, you know, and keep them going. So it's a good program. Can you tell me some of the things that the Department of Ag does? I think the general public doesn't realize you do weights and measures. You have the dog laws.
Yeah.
What else do you have that maybe they don't realize is under the Department of Ag?
Oh, fireworks. That always sort of like people say, what are you talking about, right? We inspect the gas pumps. It's under the Weights and Measures program. We have some counties and local municipalities who do that. Food safety. Do a lot of work with the plant industry, right? So that's the inspection of plants that are sold at the Home Depot and the nurseries. It's inspecting milk. It's making sure that the high path AI, all of these issues around poultry and everything animal health. But what's interesting is the number of species that are now in the animal health area, right? We've got 1,000 deer farmers. When I say that, the folks are like, what are you talking about, right? When that conversation started 10 years ago, we may have had 300. So all of those are now part of agriculture. So we do all the charitable food system. Product that's donated and it goes into the school, or into the food banks and the local community is part of ag.
Are the amusement rides under ag as
well?
Yeah,
so amusement rides.
So I think that's something people don't realize when they're going to parks, that they're inspected through Department of Ag.
Zip lines.
The zip lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all of these inflatable jump and bounce rides are part of the Department of Agriculture. So,
right.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the deer farmers. So I think one of the things, again, I think people don't realize comes under Department of Ag, the chronic waste disease.
Yes.
So that's something I think people think would be under game, you know, the Fish and Game, Bureau of Fish and Game, but that's something under ag. So how are we doing with that? Is that under control or still an issue?
Yeah, that's still an issue, right? So, you know, we work in partnership with the Game Commission, but there were some years ago, all of the deer with the Game Commission, the deer farmers, excuse me, really felt like their long-term interest was with the Department of Ag, given our work on production and you know, the propagation of things versus just in the control management on the game side. Short answer though, we've had chronic wasting disease. We've had a couple positive again this hunting season, but I would say in total, and this is to keep it in perspective, you know, the number of positives relatively low, still too many, relatively low. But we've got to do a better job, you know, monitoring, making sure our captive herds are good, and also the wild herds are healthy. We want that, right? We want them both to be healthy.
And that falls under you because of your laboratory. Is that where to study that?
It's under us for two reasons. One, the propagation. If it's inside the fence, it's viewed as production. Okay. If it's outside, it's viewed as wild. So inside, so we manage things inside. Okay. So we have that. But the diagnostic work is a huge part of that, right? All of the science for the chronic wasting disease is found in our Penn Vet, Penn State, and our lab here in Harrisburg.
I think one other thing that we're hearing a lot about now in Northampton County, and I think it started or was very bad in Berks, now it's moving to Northampton, is the spotted lanternfly.
Spotted lanternfly, you know, and it's another one of those problems, you know, that there's not a good answer for. First time in North America, found in Berks County 3 years ago. You know, so the time you figure out what it is, how do you treat it? Our challenge is that there's no sort of natural enemies to this thing. There's no sort of labeled product to say if you spray this, that goes away, right? So people are crazy about this. There's nothing that much they can do. That's not a good answer. Then you've given those answers, and so have I. We're just sort of working our way through it. We're working very aggressively with Penn State University. We're doing a lot of research, working with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, but we're trying to keep it contained. We've got it in 13 counties, but just to demonstrate, in 3 years, it's moved from 1 county to 13. So we're trying to sort of put this buffer around Southeast PA.
So is it very easy for them to, I go visit someone in Berks and gets onto my car and I take it back to the county? Is it that easy to transport them?
It's that easy.
It's
right?
that easy.
So part of the public campaign has been, you know, if you see it, report it. Don't take it with you. Don't take it out of don't take it anywhere, but particularly out of the quarantined area. Now that's easy to say, but if you're a truck on 78 or a rail line somewhere, it's a little hard to do. But we're trying to be really aggressive in the education outreach, destroy the egg masses, but it's one of those issues where we really have to, we need a good product to use, right, to try to knock that down. So
I think one other thing that people may not know is the money that is brought into the Commonwealth from agriculture. Can you explain how many jobs are in the agricultural community, and maybe what kind of dollars we're seeing in our economy through ag?
Yeah, it's a great question, and timely. Just today we released the economic impact study and a strategic plan for Pennsylvania agriculture, and that's been an effort of the last couple of years, driven by two things. One, everybody has a different definition of what is agriculture, right? Mm-hmm. We felt it was really time to try to standardize that, and standardize it meaning it's both the production ag and what most folks would associate with agriculture. It's the farm and farm activity, and there are some things that are obvious. There's a lot that aren't, right? So we wanted to put the hardwoods industry in, which is big in your district. That was not part of the definition. Food processing, equine. So the short of all of that is the impact, when you put it together, is about $160 billion of economic impact. 18% of the state's gross product is out of agriculture and food. 550,000 jobs in the state attached to ag and food. Mm. It's a big piece of Pennsylvania.
Big piece of Pennsylvania.
And that's what we celebrate this week.
#1 industry.
Right here.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for stopping and
pleasure.
With me.
Oh, always good to see you. Thanks for all your good work.
Welcome to Northampton County. Anytime you get that way, let me know.
We'll be there.
All right.
Good.
Thank you so much.
You bet.